It's been a wild week for some of the top talents at ESPN. We know everything that happened with Pat McAfee, with him slamming ESPN executives, the Aaron Rodgers drama, etc. But for Stephen A. Smith, he has decided once again to take aim at Jason Whitlock. Now, this is not the first time this has happened in the past couple months. For some reason, Stephen A. Smith absolutely despises Jason Whitlock, and he decided to devote 45 minutes of his show today, his podcast that he does, going all in on Jason Whitlock. Unfortunately, there doesn't seem to be too much substance there other than he absolutely despises the guy and says a lot of other people don't like him either. Stephen A. Smith torches Jason Whitlock, quote, "I've had enough of that fat bastard, that piece of shit." And this is really all happening because Jason Whitlock has been hammering Stephen A. Smith over the recent months, specifically about his book that just came out, his memoir that just came out. And Jason Whitlock is alleging some of the stories in there aren't exactly accurate. Things like him getting a scholarship to this Division II school before it was, super common to have full ride scholarships at D2. Also, this story about making 17 straight three-pointers that Jason Whitlock kind of memed on, called into question. And for some reason, Stephen A. Smith has decided that Jason Whitlock is like the most important thing, that he constantly has to respond to him, that he constantly has to respond to everything he says. Clearly, it gets under his skin. And he made the big announcement today. Today is the day I finally speak my mind about that no good fat bastard. You know who I'm talking about. Recording now. You'll want to see this. Jason Whitlock says, "Can't wait." And then he does respond like this a couple hours ago. "Could you imagine being a journalist covering sports media and the highest profile guy at ESPN writes a book full of fabrications and exaggerations, and you're too afraid to address the fact the guy spent an hour cussing and name-calling and never addressing any of the obvious questions about the truth of his memoir? Get off your knees." And then he specifically calls out Andrew Marchand of the New York Post. And it all seems to stem from, this meme, Stephen A. Smith, his 17 straight three-pointers at Winston-Salem State basketball program. And also specifically calling into question some stats that don't add up, some stories from him that don't add up about the injury and how many games he played and shit like this. Let's watch a little bit of this. Here's the reason why Stephen A. Smith going off on Jason Whitlock. Other than Jason saying he's such a bad journalist, ESPN installed him as the head of, their platform, so he'd be easy to control. He does go say that. Then he gets into the specific stuff, the inaccuracies from Stephen A. Smith.
Because his inadequacies as a journalist make him easy to control.
He ain't lying.
When I listened to Cat Williams talk about Kevin Hart and Steve Harvey, my mind immediately drifted to Stephen A. Smith's memoir. Smith's story just doesn't add up.
What they're not telling is I only played one game because I cracked my kneecap.
1.5 points per game. How do you average that in one game? Is there a 1.5 pointer in Division II basketball? How do you do it? It can't be done.
My nigga.
It's an impossibility. And I know I'm not great at math, but you can't average 1.5 points a game in basketball in one game.
My bone cracked in half. My first year at Winston-Salem State.
Bullshit.
Are there two Stephen Smiths that played at Winston-Salem State? Because one guy, according to the stat sheet, played 9 games, and the guy on TV is saying he never played a game. The guy on the right is Big House Games, the coach, who again, Stephen A. Smith in his memoir claims that, Big House Games was like a father figure. I sat in his office and we talked and he was my mentor and he's my guide and he's this and that. Big House Games in his book, no mention of Stephen A. Smith.
All right, so these are the type of things, right? These are the type of things we're seeing from Stephen A. Smith and Jason Whitlock. This is what really fucking triggered him. And now you've got this. Again, this is like 45 minutes on the Stephen A. Smith show. He would claim that he asked ESPN for the go-ahead, that none of his bosses wanted him to do this, that he talked to his pastor about it and apologized beforehand. He talked to his family and apologized to them, that he was going to have to go in on Jason Whitlock. These were some of the clips coming out initially of this. Stephen A. Smith calls Jason Whitlock a bitch and a fat piece of shit.
You betrayed me. Did you tell the folks that? You bitch. Did you tell them? You fat piece of shit. Did you tell them that? Got the names. We got Jamel Hill. We got Howard Bryant. You want me to bring up the other writers that would have?
Oh, Jamel Hill and Howard Bryant, two of the biggest woke fucking pieces of shit that work at ESPN. Some of the most racist people there. Wow, that's quite a list there, Stephen A. Anyway, this is Doug Gottlieb saying whatever. Did he explain how he got a scholarship when D2 Hoops didn't have him? And it was a workout in season where he made 17 straight shots. Again, there's been some speculation about that whole scholarship thing, if D2 Division Hoops actually did have a full ride scholarship at that point or not, things like that. But anyway, I digress. Let's listen to the biggest clip we have of Stephen A. Smith talking about Jason Whitlock. This is about 3 minutes, and this is how the entire thing was. Not a lot of substance, not a lot of, hey, this is why he's a fat bastard, no good piece of shit, but here it is.
And please do not allow this to be a reflection on my character, because this is not how I act every day. But I mean it from my soul when I say this is the worst human being I've ever known. I don't know of another human being worse than Jason Whitlock. He is a piece of shit. He's the dude that's going to have a funeral and ain't going to be no pallbearers. Might be 2 people to show up. He's that dude. He is the absolute worst. And he lies. And he incriminates. And he tries to set people up to fail, to big up himself because he can't do it on his own. He had a television show. He failed. He's had opportunities one time after another. He doesn't measure up. And now he's coming at the big dog. And let me tell you something right now. I am the big dog. I ain't the only one.
And that kind of makes me think about, it's about a minute in, I'm the big dog. Stephen A. Smith is a massive name, right? Massive face of ESPN for the past several years. The fact that he is getting so irritated by the shit that Jason Whitlock says is strange. And it feels off to a lot of people that he's given it this much energy and really had nothing of substance. Basically just saying, hey, Jason Whitlock went to a lot of other channels and he failed. He moved on. He burned bridges. People don't like him. That's basically Stephen A. Smith's entire thing. People don't like Jason Whitlock. That's kind of what he's saying right now. And I just don't know if that's worth 45 minutes of your podcast.
I ain't the only one. There's plenty. Skip Bayless, apologies to him too for bringing up Jason Whitlock's name in the same sentence as him. But we all know what time it is. Everyone knows. All the executives at all the networks, they know what a piece of shit he is. And they begged me not to do this. But even my pastor, A.R. Bernard, said, I'm not happy about it. But every now and then we got to do what we got to do.
I'm just... That even calls it. So you really went to your pastor and said, "Hey, can I go throw this guy under the bus? I'm my podcast pastor. Is that okay?" And he's like, "You know, Stephen A., sometimes you got to do what you got to do. The good Lord will forgive you, Stephen A." I'm sure that's what happened.
I promise you, and last to my sister Carmen, I won't do this again. I promise you. I know you cringing. You didn't want me to do this. I'm sorry, sis. It was necessary. He's a sorry, fat piece of shit. A no of the worst order. That's who he is. And I want to make sure everybody knows that. And I said to Isaiah Thomas, and I said to Dan Lebertard, if you care anything about our friendship, don't ever call me about him again.
Now, this is part of the story he was talking about was that Jason Whitlock, wanted to mend fences at one point. He called Isaiah Thomas and Dan Lebertard and had them pass messages to Stephen A. Said, is there any way you can forgive him? Blah, blah, blah. That's where this part's coming from.
I'm a very forgiving person. Not with him. I don't care what beef I had. I don't care how many of you out there that hate me, whatever former athletes, all this stuff. Man, please, I'm sorry. Because I certainly don't hate y'all. We might have our differences from time to time, but ain't never that. This is the exception. I hate this bastard. Not even, far more than a little bit. He is the worst human being any of you will ever meet. You get within a mile of his presence. Wrap your arms around yourself to protect your soul. He is Cain. He is a devil. The worst. That's all I have to say. Y'all have a nice day.
But it's like, what? Again, you go watch the 45 minutes. It basically comes down to, hey, Jason Whitlock had a show that he failed at. There's a lot of people that just don't like him in the sports media industry. And then just repeating, he's a piece of shit. He's a fat bastard. He's the devil. He's Cain. He's Cain and I'm Abel. He betrayed me. This is very strange behavior from Stephen A. Smith to spend this much time on somebody and not address any of the things that, you know, Jason Whitlock's actually talking about, that he's bringing, the criticism that he's talking about from his book, right? You know, Jason Whitlock's saying that he doesn't feel like all of that's accurate, like some of it's been exaggerated, like some of it's just bullshit, made up shit. So for him to spend this much time and not talk about that at all, not refute any of that, and simply just make fun of Jason Whitlock and say that he's a loser and nobody likes him and he's the devil, stay away. It seems soft and it seems pathetic and it seems like this really bothers Stephen A. for some reason. And right now, Jason Whitlock is winning this because the way that Stephen A. Smith is reacting to everything. I'm sure Jason Whitlock isn't going to let it lay there. I'm sure he's going to have a big response. We'll see if Stephen A. Smith, whether it's direct or another passive-aggressive shot, if he ever talks about this again like he promised not to, like he promised his pastor and his sister and all his friends that he wouldn't do. What do you guys think about this? Let me know in the comments section below. Smash a like button, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell for notifications, share this video out there, and I'll talk to you later.